Welcome everyone to another episode of Rush Hour. I'm your host Logan,
And I am Blake.
and this week we're talking about The Bad Batch, the newest Star Wars cartoon. Blake, tell
Mhm.
me a little bit about The Bad Batch.
All right. So, Star Wars The Bad Batch is what a lot of people refer to as the eighth season of Star Wars The Clone Wars, which is one of the greatest animated things ever. And if you disagree, you're just wrong. Uh, so, basically, what this is early on in Star Wars The Clone Wars, we meet a few clones that are defective. Uh, One of them, has enhanced like hunting capabilities. One of them has incredible strength. One of them is super accurate from range, and one of them is incredibly smart compared to other things. So they're all, I guess, as we've been talking about, Loki and the MCU. So I guess you could kind of refer to them as super soldiers in their own ways.
Yeah, they're like super soldiers of the original clones.
Yes. So uh, the higher ups on Camino and later on the Empire start referring to this group of clones as the Bad Batch, which is Clone Force 99. So as you see here, going from left to right, we've got their nicknames of Tech, Hunter, Echo in the middle. Echo is a clone that was not defective. He's a regular clone from Clone Wars who was critically injured and eventually joined the Bad Batch as their fifth member.
Kind of like the
Uh,
cyborg of the clone world, in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah. He was, his arm was destroyed, blown off. I'm not entirely certain of what that was. I don't remember. But he's got a little robot arm, kind of like how R2D2 does, and he can, hack things and stuff. But there's Echo in the middle. You've got Wrecker, who is the brute force, and then on the far right, you've got Crosshair, who is the sniper of the group. Um, and Bad Batch takes place. Uh, the start of Bad Batch is Order 66.
Mhm.
That's when this show starts. So that is, for those who don't know, that is where uh, Emperor Palpatine um, said, "Okay, it's time to pull the trigger. It's time to end this war because I've been controlling both sides." So there is a inhibitor chip in every single clone, um, including the Bad Batch here, that basically once Order 66 is triggered, all clones are ordered to kill any Jedi that they find. So we start out with we start out the Bad Batch with these guys here, Echo, Crosshair, Hunter, Tech, and Wrecker. We start with them engaging in a battle, and then Order 66 happens, and this show is basically the Bad Batch, as well as any other surviving clones and any other surviving Jedi, which, as of this recording, we haven't really encountered a whole lot of in this season. Um, but it's basically the clones trying to figure out what's going on. Why are they ordered to kill the people that were really the reason that this war was favoring the Republic instead of the Separatists, because there were a lot more Jedi than there were Sith, at least on camera. So with all that power at their disposal, why are now they being ordered to kill the Jedi? And it's just them. This whole show is just them trying to figure things out, and it's really interesting to see how it's been playing out.
Yes. One of the things I've really liked is if you're a fan of Rebels, they give some good Easter eggs. If you're a fan of Clone Wars, you obviously get some great Easter eggs in there. Especially in the more recent episodes for the Rebels fans, you get Chopper and Hera a lot, and Chopper is a fan favorite for obvious reasons of just his comedy, and so I've really enjoyed that watching Rebels.
Yeah.
And I've really
It's
enjoyed the show. Some critiques about the show is I haven't loved how some of the episodes seem repetitive, how it's like, every episode's kind of like they're doing just side quest for their employer. But for the most part, I've really enjoyed the show. What are your thoughts on that, Blake?
Yeah, so to your earlier point, the Rebels, connections and stuff. I have not seen Rebels in its entirety. I've actually just started watching it a couple weeks ago. I'm a couple episodes into the first season. Really enjoying it. That's a whole nother discussion though.
Hmm.
But with the Bad Batch and finding uh, cornerstone of this show, as we'll get into in just a bit. But it shows that Omega is, not alone as a kid who wants to explore. Hera, is held back by her parents who are diplomats, and they're being held back by the new emerging galactic empire.
Hmm.
And here's Hera, who's just a kid with her droid Chop. They're just wanting to explore the world and figure out what's going on, and it's just they're not being allowed to. And the same thing happens with Omega, because mainly Hunter is stopping her from going out and exploring, because Omega's a wanted target by the Empire for some reason. We don't really know why yet as of this recording, but
We know a little bit. We know that she's genetic. We have an idea, kind of, or we have at least what the
we know
show's
that
told
she is a
us.
clone. We know that Omega is a clone, just like everybody else,
But
but
she's
it's
the purest clone like Bubba Fett or Jango Fett, and we think that might be why. There's got to be more to it that we don't know yet, but that's kind of the basis of what we know so far.
yeah.
One of the things I've really enjoyed and that I really enjoy with some more of the recent Star Wars content is the in between uh, episode 3 and 4. I really like that because there's a lot that happened in between that period that we don't know about, like how the empire took over. We know we have a good idea, but we don't know exactly how. And just seeing the transition of the imperial guards invading cities and transferring everybody to trade over to imperial currency, I just find that really interesting, and like the details of it, of how they went from the republic to the galactic empire controlling space.
Mm. Yeah, so that's the when this show was announced, so Clone Wars season 7 wrapped up on Star Wars Day 2020. Um and that seemed to be it as far as people knew. And then a couple months later, it was announced that the Bad Batch would uh, be like when it was first announced, it was kind of people thought it was going to be a side story, and it was just gonna follow the Bad Batch.
During the
But no, this ends up being um, the next story that needs to be told, and the Bad Batch is just our vehicle to ride along with, to see. I believe that this show is designed to give more insight on just what goes down. How do clone troopers turn into stormtroopers? Uh, and slowly we've started to see that. So, like as I mentioned earlier, the inhibitor chip that comes into play instantly in the very first episode, which was 70 minutes, mind you. The premiere was on Star Wars Day this year, 2021, with a 70-minute premiere. And we also got 2 episodes that week. So it was a huge week for Bad Batch, huge week for Star Wars. But that first episode, we find we come across after Order 66 is triggered, we see that Hunter is disobeying the order to kill the Jedi Padawan that they find, or that they were just fighting with, who actually ends up being Kanan from Rebels. Um, so we see that Hunter is disobeying this, and Crosshair is firmly against Hunter's disobedience. So he's about to kill the Jedi, and Hunter, stops it. He prevents it from happening. And that eventually causes a rift in the group, and Crosshair ends up leaving and going full-blown Empire, go Team Sith all the way, and he is stone cold, ruthless, while the rest of them are just trying to fight for the same thing that they fought for before, which was uh, free will and peace. But Crosshair is he's fighting for what he believes is true, because that inhibitor chip took him over. And we see in one of the later episodes that it almost takes over Wrecker, and it does for a little bit, but they're able to stop it. But it's really Omega that is calming the rest of them down, but it's also Omega that is triggering the Empire to try to track their every move. So as you go through this story, you find that more and more people are willingly joining the Empire. Whereas Crosshair was the one that has that the inhibitor chip, and he is starting to see that less and less clones are the clones are starting to not work as well according to the Empire. So they're wanting more people to willingly join their militaristic efforts, and there's some people that are against it. There's some people that are with it. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
I'm interested to see how they're gonna, if this will explain how they phased out clones, how the Empire phased them out, and to what degree they phased them out. Or at least that's our understanding, that they did phase them out.
Yeah. So,
Um, I also really like some of the fun Easter eggs, like the popcorn that Wrecker eats,
mm,
how that's in Galaxy's Edge, and so that's a little connection that's really fun because they've connected the park with the actual show, and I really enjoyed that.
yeah.
So I definitely want to try some of that popcorn next time I visit. But
Deal with Disney is that immersion factor. They want you, with their parks especially, they want you to be fully immersed with the storytelling. So like, for example, non-Star Wars example, you've got Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which is a new attraction that opened there. They ideally, in a non-pandemic world, uh, the story of that ride is that you are attending the premiere of a new Mickey Mouse short, but then Goofy causes some things, and your waiting area explodes, and you are now in the cartoon, and that's how the ride is triggered. Uh, Again, it's a non-pandemic world because of those are small waiting rooms and the like.
and
Uh,
pre-shows aren't going on right now.
yeah, pre-shows aren't really ride pre-shows aren't really a thing, so the immersion's kind of halted for a second, but not really, because you still go into the world. But with things like Galaxy's Edge, there is a canonical point in the Star Wars timeline where Galaxy's Edge is. It is between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. So, Star Wars Rise of the Resistance and Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run are taking place in that spot in time. They are part of Star Wars canon. You are in Rise of the Resistance. You are actually infiltrating a first order
Yeah,
base.
First Order starship.
Yeah, and like that's there's a reason that spoilers for Rise of the Resistance. Nobody dies in like none of the characters you meet in Rise of the Resistance die uh, because they are in the Rise of Skywalker. Kylo Ren is a thing in the Rise of Skywalker, so they still have to. It's just bridging the gap. And this show, bringing it back to our main discussion, this show bridges that gap even more between Clone Wars and Rebels, because you see very specific people, Kanan in the premiere, Hera now, as children, and then in just 20 years or so uh, later, you hate because that main trilogy of movies could be better. I'm not saying that it's bad. I think it's still really good. It's really well done for what it is. Uh, but it's all about storytelling. It's all about that immersion. You want to know, there are people that want to know, what happens to other characters while we're watching these main movies. Okay, what's happening with everybody else? And that's what these shows are meant to do. It's meant to elaborate on characters that are not featured in the Skywalker saga. It's all about that immersion.
Yeah. Um, One thing I really enjoy, I'm interested to see how long this show's gonna go for, and like just the twist it's gonna have. How much of an impact will it actually have on the overall Star Wars universe? I'm really interested in that. What do you think?
So I believe we just got episode 12.
Yes,
Is it 12? 13.
13.
The
Okay.
last week's episode was 13. So we have 3 more weeks of Bad Batch, and then who knows? But I'm not entirely sure if this will get more seasons. Um, what I'm curious about is, now that the Skywalker saga is complete with the Rise of Skywalker releasing in theaters to uh, critical and commercial success, even though Star Wars purists are not on board. Uh, I mean, you can't deny that it did well at the box office. It just did.
Yeah.
Um, so it's not that Disney's done with Star Wars movies. They're going to continue releasing huge cinematic pieces, but with Disney Plus being a thing, how how many stories can they tell on the screen without like having to start those stories at a smaller scale on Disney Plus to see how well it does? I
Yeah.
don't see a live action Bad Batch. I don't see that ever happening. I think, uh, granted, I didn't think we'd ever see Ahsoka Tano in live action, but now that's a thing. She's in the Mandalorian. Um, the Mandalorian is the real crucial part here, because that is not new. It's following an old. It's after an old story. It's after the original trilogy. But it's going to bridge the gap, and we're going to see, because now we're at a point where, at the end of Mandalorian season 2, spoilers for that, Luke Skywalker appears and takes Grogu from the Mandalorian for Jedi training, because Grogu is force sensitive, and Grogu is like one of the last remaining Jedi, and Luke needs to start teaching these kids. And we see what happens later, in the sequel movies, that Luke is kind of pushed away by Ben Solo, who had the dark side in him just a bit, and that eventually turned him into Kylo Ren. But with Luke taking Grogu, that bridging the gap to, where is Grogu in the sequels? So my thing is, going back to Bad Batch, where is the Bad Batch in the original trilogy? Because you see uh, Rebels, like you might see, one original trilogy character, once in a blue moon. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen Rebels all the way through. Like I know you see Yoda at least once in Vision with Ezra. I know that. Um, so you see those characters who are across all the timeline, but these side characters that have their own stories, the Bad Batch, and I really want to know where they go with Omega. What happens there
Hmm.
is where do we ever see? I guess my point would be, where do we ever see do we ever see side stories set inside the trilogy timeline? So like do we ever get a new movie that takes place between episodes 1 and 3, or between episodes 4 and 6, or 7 and 9?
I'm not sure. One thing I am interested is with Crosshair. He's kind of, I don't know if you'd call him the main villain of this series, but I guess you could call him the main villain because he's really the one who keeps showing up and trying to find them. And I think that's where the finale is going to lead us to, is Crosshair finally catching up with all of them. And I wonder if that's going to lead to him taking Omega, and that's where it leads us into the second season, or if that'll lead them into being able to get him down and take out his inhibitor chip and seeing where that goes, and to where eventually Crosshair might come back to his old team and join back up with them.
Mm.
That's what I think, or that's what I hope will happen.
I believe it was not this previous episode, but the last episode, Crosshair got permission from the Imperial commander to specifically hunt down the Bad Batch. So
Yes,
that starts that arc towards this season 1 finale.
yes. And so I'm
Arc
wondering if that'll leave us with a happy ending to where they get to remove his inhibitor chip, or if it will end up with him. I can see it ending up with him taking Omega, and then season 2 is about them getting Omega back.
Possibly. I can also see this season wrapping up with maybe the episode before the end, we get Crosshair failing to find them, or failing to kill them, just because they're his brothers. They're the people that he's spent his entire existence, hanging out with and battling with. They've literally been through war together.
Yeah,
Uh, so it might show Crosshair having those emotions, and the Empire sees, okay, he's not willing to get it done, and they either kill Crosshair, or they say, you're of no use to us anymore. And that's where we get that full on uh, transition into, it's not clones anymore. It's exclusively people who are wanting to fight for the Empire.
yeah.
I could see that. I could see that going multiple directions as well.
Hmm. Yeah, you say wanting to fight for the Empire, but I don't know. I feel like it's more of a wanting to eat sort of thing, so you fight for the Empire. Kind of like Solo, in Solo we see how poor he was and how he was considering being a pilot for the Empire, not because he necessarily wanted to specifically for the Empire. He wanted to be a pilot, not for the Empire though, but more so just be able to live and survive. What do you
Before we
think
wrap,
about
is I wanted to talk about the side characters. So we've already talked about characters like Hera and her family on Ryloth and that entire storyline, but I want to talk about the other characters, namely Sid, who you see below Wrecker here on this image here. Sid is kind of like a bounty hunting middleman. She is not the nicest person in the world, but she will get your pay if you do the job for her. Um, she has developed a relationship with the Bad Batch, and namely Omega. Omega really sees that uh, Sid is not a terrible person. So she's kind of formed a friendship with Sid, and Sid understands that. But the Bad Batch, namely Hunter, is sketched out a little bit about anybody he comes across now because he can't trust anybody. Uh, so it this I guess the last when did we meet Sid? Episode 6, 7. Um,
I'm not sure exactly.
I mean, it was a long time ago when we met Sid for the first time.
Yeah, she's been around for a while.
Uh, but that's where it comes into play that all these episodes have really been kind of filler. A bunch of episodes have felt like filler.
Yeah, a little
I'm
repetitive.
just going to do a mission for Sid, and then that's just kind of it.
Agreed. Um, I haven't disliked them necessarily though.
Yeah, I mean, the show is good. I mean, get that out there. The show is very, very good. Um, and it is, for all intents and purposes, while it is an extension of the Clone Wars, this is the first season of a show. This is us really getting to know these characters. And if there is a second season, if that exists, um, will these characters, will these side characters be, further developed? And I think Sid is a character that could be developed on. Um, even in the far extended thing, like not even visual. If it's uh, a book or a comic series, um, showcasing Sid handing out bounties to other people.
Hmm.
Sid finds herself on Corellia, and Han Solo does a thing for her. Not Corellia, but somewhere in the galaxy post Solo, but pre New Hope. Do we see Sid and Han Solo interact? Do we, is that a thing that could happen?
I hope so. That would
That
be an
would that
episode.
would be awesome in any format. A series with Sid and Han Solo bounty hunting would be the best.
Or just an episode, man.
Yeah, just straight up anything.
I mean, they
Um,
did it with Hera, and Chopper, so I don't see any reason why they couldn't do it with Han Solo.
yeah, I mean, I think they'd have to convince Alden to do it, but I feel like he would be totally down to do it.
Is he the one who plays young Solo?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Harrison Ford's done. He is not, he is literally. I think his top goal right now is to get all of his big characters killed off in some way so he can just retire in peace.
Yeah, he's currently surviving the Indiana Jones movie right now.
Oh yeah. So I don't be surprised if Indiana Jones bites it in this movie. But uh, Han Solo would be interesting. Do we see Sid play both sides? Do we see Sid uh, in contact with Jabba's people? Do we see Sid in contact with Boba Fett at some point? It's all it's these smaller characters that you don't think of big picture in terms of the Skywalker saga, but there's always somebody wants to know every single thing. And more Star Wars content is just good for everybody. It just is. Because somebody's gonna like it. Like, while some people don't like the sequels, they love these side stories. They love the Bad Batch. They love the Galactic Civil War um, era. The prequel era is just it's my favorite era of Star Wars. So I'm super into this story. I'm super into Cal Kestis in Jedi Fallen Order. I want to see Cal Kestis in live action. I don't know if it'll happen, but I want it to happen.
I hope
Uh,
you do too.
it there's so much Star Wars in the world, whether it be books, comics. Is a real example of you don't need Jedi to tell a Star Wars story. Um, and the Bad Batch is a perfect example of that. Of this is a story about clones, and the Clone Wars is really a story about clones, but they use Jedi as a safety net. But this shows that clones are a viable option, and Solo showed that you know Han Solo by himself is an interesting enough character. Um, so we'll see where that runs, and I'm super excited to see where the Bad Batch goes. Do we see them, later in the timeline? I'm super excited to see, as I've been saying throughout this entire thing, really excited to see where Omega goes. So, what are your closing thoughts? I've rambled on there.
Super excited to see where the end goes. Like I said, I hope it ends up with Crosshair joining back up with the Bad Batch after they remove his inhibitor chip. But I think maybe for story purposes, maybe he'll be able to capture Omega and bring her back. I'm not sure, but I'm super excited to see where it goes. And just super excited to see where the Star Wars universe goes after this, because they've finished the Skywalker saga, and now we're getting into a new area where it's really going to start going into the Star Wars cinematic universe. Um, and I'm just excited to see how they do that and everything they're going to be doing with that. And I'm super excited for all that. But as always, thank you guys for listening. I am Logan Rush,
And I'm Blake Spivey.
and thank you for watching this episode of Rush Hour.